There is a simple reason your life does not change. It is not because you lack knowledge. It is not because you lack potential. It is not because you are broken. It is because your actions are unreliable. You already know what to do. You know what matters. You know what would move your life forward. And yet, day after day, your behavior does not match that knowledge. Some days you do the work. Some days you do not. Some days you show up. Some days you negotiate over time. That inconsistency becomes your identity. Not because you chose it, but because you allowed it. Most people think discipline is a feeling. They think it is motivation, confidence, or inner strength. They wait to feel disciplined before they act. That is why they never become disciplined. Feelings are unstable. They rise and fall with sleep, mood, stress, and results. If your actions depend on how you feel, your life will always drift. This book is built on a different assumption. Discipline is not emotional. It is mechanical. It is the ability to produce the same behavior regardless of internal state. When your behavior becomes reliable, everything else follows when it does not. Nothing does. The military understands this. They do not train soldiers by inspiring them. They do not ask how recruits feel. They design systems that force consistent behavior under pressure. Over time, those behaviors turn into habits. Those habits turn into identity. Discipline is not discovered. It is installed. That same logic applies to you. The real problem is not that you lack discipline. The real problem is that you lack a system that makes discipline inevitable. Without clear standards, without non-negotiable rules, without a mechanism that survives bad days, your behavior will always default to comfort. Not because you are weak, but because that is how the human brain works. This book is not here to motivate you. Motivation fades. This book is not here to make you feel better about yourself. Feelings do not change behavior. This book is here to help you build behavioral reliability, the ability to do what needs to be done. Even when you are tired, bored, frustrated, or uninterested, you will not start with mindset. You will start with action. Small, controlled, repeatable action. You will learn how to create standards that are so clear they leave no room for negotiation. You will learn how to protect those standards when pressure rises. You will learn how to move through the phase where results are invisible and quitting feels reasonable. And eventually, you will reach the point where discipline is no longer something you force. It is simply who you are. This is not a promise based on belief. It is a promise based on process. If you follow the system in this book, your behavior will stabilize. When your behavior stabilizes, your confidence will no longer depend on motivation. Your self-respect will no longer depend on mood. You will become someone who does what they say they will do. That is the foundation of every meaningful life. This book is not for everyone. If you are looking for comfort, affirmation, or inspiration, you will not find it here. If you are willing to take responsibility for your actions and install a system that removes excuses, keep reading. Discipline is not about feeling strong. It is about acting consistently. Everything else is noise. Chapter 1. Discipline is not a feeling. Discipline is not motivation. It is not inspiration. It is not a surge of energy that shows up on good days and disappears on bad ones. If discipline required the right mood, nobody would ever be disciplined for long. The moment you tie action to how you feel, you give up control. And once control is gone, consistency dies with it. This is where most people lose. Not because they are incapable, not because they lack knowledge, but because they silently made one fatal mistake. They allowed their emotions to decide whether they show up or not. Be honest with yourself. You already know what you should be doing. You know what to eat. You know when to sleep. You know when to work. You know what to stop wasting time on. The problem has never been information. The problem is not clarity. The problem is not that you don't understand your goals. The problem is that you only act when it feels comfortable. And every time you wait to feel ready, you are training yourself to hesitate. Most people think discipline is something you summon, like courage, like confidence, like motivation. They wait for it to arrive. They wait to feel strong enough. They wait to feel focused enough. They wait for the right time, the right energy, the right circumstances. And while they wait, their life stays exactly where it is. Because feelings are unreliable. Feelings change every hour. Feelings are shaped by sleep, stress, hunger, distraction, and fear. If feelings are in charge, your actions will be unstable, and unstable actions can never build a strong life. Look at the pattern. You start with good intentions. You promise yourself you will show up. You tell yourself this time will be different. Then the discomfort appears. You feel tired. You feel bored. You feel resistance, and suddenly, the rule changes. Just today. I'll do it tomorrow. I deserve a break. That moment seems small, but it is not. That moment is where your self-respect is trained or destroyed. Every time you back out, you are not just skipping a task. You are teaching your mind that your word does not matter. This is the real damage of inconsistency. It is not the missed workout. It is not the skipped session. It is the quiet erosion of trust between you and yourself. Over time, you stop believing your own promises. You stop taking your own goals seriously. You become someone who plans a lot and executes very little, not because you are lazy, but because you have trained yourself to negotiate with discomfort instead of overriding it. Self-help culture feeds this weakness. It tells you to wait until you feel aligned. It tells you to listen to your emotions. It tells you that you need more motivation, more clarity, more inspiration. That advice sounds kind. It sounds reasonable. And it is completely wrong. Waiting to feel ready is the most reliable way to never change. Thinking does not create discipline. Wanting does not create discipline. Understanding does not create discipline. Only action does. And action that depends on feelings is not action you can trust. Here is the truth most people avoid. Discipline does not begin in the mind. It begins in behavior. Long before discipline becomes an identity, it is a forced action, a decision to move even when every part of you resists. There are two forms of discipline, whether you realize it or not. The first is behavioral discipline. The second is identity discipline. Behavioral discipline is what you do. Identity discipline is who you become. And this is the rule: you cannot escape. Identity never comes first. Behavior does. You do not think your way into discipline. You act your way into it. No disciplined person started by feeling disciplined. They started by doing what needed to be done without permission from their emotions. Over time, those actions repeated. The repetitions became habits. The habits became normal. And eventually, discipline stopped feeling forced and started feeling natural. but that only happens after behavior is locked in. There is no shortcut around this process. Most people try to skip the hard part. They want to feel disciplined before they act disciplined. They want confidence before consistency. They want belief before proof. And because they reverse the order, they stay stuck. Discipline A, the disciplined identity, never appears without discipline B. Disciplined behavior. No amount of mindset work can replace this. No affirmation can override it. No insight can bypass it. The moment you accept this, responsibility shifts back to you. The problem is not your emotions. The problem is that you have given them authority they do not deserve. You let tiredness cancel your plans. You let boredom cancel your standards. You let resistance rewrite your rules. Discipline begins when emotions lose their voting power. When the decision to act is no longer up for debate. When the rule is simple, the work gets done because it is the work. This does not mean you ignore reality. It means you stop negotiating with discomfort. Feeling tired does not mean stop. Feeling unmotivated does not mean delay. Feeling resistance does not mean something is wrong. It means you are at the exact point where discipline is required. This is the moment most people turn back. This is also the moment where progress is made. Understand what this book is and what it is not. This is not a book to make you feel better about yourself. It is not here to comfort you. It is not here to explain why things are hard and leave it at that. This book exists to change how you behave. It exists to give you a system that removes emotion from execution. It exists to help you become someone who shows up regardless of mood, regardless of conditions, regardless of excuses. If you are looking for motivation, this is not for you. If you want encouragement without responsibility, this is not for you. If you want to feel understood without being challenged, stop here. But if you are tired of disappointing yourself, if you are tired of starting over, if you are tired of knowing what to do and still not doing it, then keep going. Discipline is not a feeling. It never was. It is a decision enforced through behavior. And once behavior is enforced long enough, it becomes who you are. The only question left is not whether you are capable. The question is whether you are willing to act before you feel ready. In the next chapter, there will be no long explanations, no philosophy, no persuasion. You will be required to do one simple thing. And that one action will begin the shift. Read on only if you are prepared to act without waiting for permission from how you feel. Chapter 2. Show up act before you understand everything. Most people wait for clarity before they move. They tell themselves they will start once they feel ready, once they understand the system, once they have the perfect plan. That wait is the problem. Clarity does not come first. Action does. Understanding follows behavior, not the other way around. If you are waiting to feel confident before you act, you will stay exactly where you are. If you are waiting to feel motivated before you show up, you will keep drifting. There is no hidden switch that flips inside you one day and suddenly makes discipline easy. The only way forward is to show up before you understand everything. That is how every form of real discipline begins. The habit that keeps people stuck is not laziness. It is negotiation. They negotiate with their feelings. They negotiate with their energy. They negotiate with their doubts. They read another article. They watch another video. They tell themselves they are preparing. They are not. They are delaying. Preparation without action is just fear wearing a smarter outfit. The mind is very good at creating reasons to wait. It will tell you to gather more information. It will tell you to be patient. It will tell you to start tomorrow. None of those voices are interested in your future. They are interested in comfort. If you listen to them, you will keep trading your potential for relief. Your brain does not learn discipline by thinking about it. It learns discipline by doing something and doing it again. Discipline is not an idea you agree with. It is a behavior you repeat, without behavior. There is nothing to build on, no habit, no momentum, no identity. Every time you act, you give your brain proof. Every time you hesitate, you give your brain an excuse. Over time, your brain believes whatever you show it most often. If you show it that you act when it is uncomfortable, it learns reliability. If you show it that you wait until it feels good, it learns avoidance. This is not a mindset issue. It is a pattern issue. That is why discipline does not start with motivation. Motivation is unstable. It comes and goes. It depends on sleep, mood, praise, results, and circumstances you do not control. Discipline starts with showing up. Showing up when you feel tired. Showing up when you feel bored. Showing up when you feel unsure. Showing up when you do not believe yet. You do not wait to feel like the kind of person who is consistent. You act like that person first. The feeling follows later. The confidence follows later. The identity follows later, right now. You do not need to understand the entire system. You do not need to see the whole path. You do not need to know where this will lead. You need one behavior, one clear action, one standard you will follow without discussion. This is what discipline looks like on the ground. It is not complex. It is not impressive. It is simple and it is strict. You do not negotiate with it. You do not optimize it. You do not improve it yet. You obey it. This is what we call discipline B. Not theory, not philosophy. Behavior, action without debate. You are not trying to become disciplined today. You are not trying to change your life today. You are doing one thing on purpose and doing it the same way every time. That is enough. That is how discipline begins. Everything else is noise. Now listen carefully, because this is the point where most people try to escape. The standard you choose must be small, smaller than you think it should be. Small enough that you have no excuse to miss it, small enough that you can do it on your worst day. If your standard requires the right mood, it is not a standard. If your standard depends on free time, it is not a standard. If your standard disappears when life gets busy, it is not a standard. A real standard survives bad sleep, low energy, stress, and doubt. A real standard does not care how you feel. This standard is not a goal. A goal is something you aim for. A standard is something you obey. A goal can be postponed. A standard cannot. You either do it or you break it. There is no middle ground. There is no partial credit. There is no negotiating window. That clarity is what gives the standard its power. Here is the command. Choose one action. One. It must be clear. It must be measurable. It must be done at a fixed time or under a fixed condition. It must be small enough that you can do it every day without exception. Decide it now, not later. Decide it and lock it in. Today, when the time comes, you will do it. You will not adjust it. You will not question it. You will not wait to feel ready. You will do it because it is your standard. Do not look for the perfect action. Perfection is another delay. Pick something simple. Show up. execute. That is all. When your mind starts talking, ignore it. When it tells you this is pointless, ignore it. When it tells you this is too easy to matter, ignore it. Easy is the point. This is not about intensity. This is about reliability. You are not allowed to ask for motivation. You are not allowed to ask for reassurance. You are not allowed to wait for confidence. Confidence is built by doing what you said you would do. Motivation is built by momentum. Momentum is built by action. Action is built by standards. This is the order. Reverse it and nothing works. Understand this clearly. The action you take today is not about results. It is about trust. Every time you follow your own standard, you build trust with yourself. Every time you break it, you weaken that trust. Self-respect is not a feeling. It is a consequence. It is earned by behavior. When you show up consistently, even in a small way, you begin to change how you see yourself. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You start seeing yourself as someone who does what they said they would do. That shift is everything. This chapter is not here to inspire you. It is not here to make you feel good. It is here to force a decision. Either you act or you do not. If you do not act, this book cannot help you. If you act, even in the smallest way, you have already stepped into a different category of person, a person who moves. Do not overthink this. Overthinking is how discipline dies. Decide, show up, execute. That is enough for today. Tomorrow, you will do it again. Not because you feel like it, not because you are excited, because it is your standard. If you are looking for permission, this is it. If you are looking for a sign, this is it. Do not turn this into another idea you agree with. Turn it into a behavior you perform. When you finish this chapter, your job is not to feel motivated. Your job is to act. The action comes first. The meaning comes later. In the next chapter, you will understand why this works. You will see the structure behind what you just did. You will see how simple behavior, repeated without compromise, becomes something much stronger. But none of that matters if you skip this step. Show up now. Act before you understand everything. This is where discipline actually starts. Chapter 3. Discipline be behavior first. You do not fail because you do not understand. You fail because your behavior cannot be trusted. That is the truth most people avoid because it removes every comfortable excuse. You already know what to do. You know you should train your body. You know you should focus your mind. You know you should work on what matters instead of drifting through distractions. Knowledge is not the problem. Information is not the problem. Motivation is not the problem. The problem is simple and brutal. You do not show up consistently. Your actions change depending on how you feel. One day you act, the next day you disappear. And because your behavior is unreliable, nothing compounds, nothing sticks, nothing becomes real. This is where Discipline B begins. Discipline B is not an idea. It is not a mindset. It is not something you feel. Discipline B is visible behavior. It is action you can point to. It is action that happens whether you feel ready or not. Discipline B is doing the right thing even when your emotions vote against it, especially when your emotions vote against it. If your actions only happen when you feel good, you do not have discipline. You have convenience, and convenience never builds anything strong. Discipline. B is simple by design. It does not ask how motivated you are. It does not care how inspired you feel. It only asks one question. Did you do it or did you not? That is it. No stories, no explanations, no emotional footnotes. Either the action happened or it did not. That binary nature is the reason Discipline B works. Your brain understands clarity. It understands rules. It understands repetition. What it does not respect is negotiation. Most people live inside negotiation. They negotiate with their mood. They negotiate with their energy. They negotiate with their comfort. Every day becomes a debate. Should I do it now or later? Should I rest or push? Should I wait until I feel more ready? That constant negotiation destroys behavioral reliability. And without behavioral reliability, your mind never commits. When your brain does not trust you to act, it stops investing energy. It stops allocating focus. It stops supporting your goals. Why would it? You have trained it not to believe you. Behavioral reliability is the real foundation of discipline. It is the ability to predict your own actions. When you say you will do something, it happens, not because you feel like it, not because someone is watching, but because that is who you are training yourself to be. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you weaken that reliability. Every time you follow through, you strengthen it. This is not philosophy. This is conditioning. You are training your own nervous system what to expect from you. Think about what happens when your behavior is inconsistent. One day you show up strong. The next day you disappear. Your brain learns a dangerous lesson. It learns that action is optional. It learns that comfort has veto power. Over time, starting feels heavier. Resistance shows up faster. Procrastination becomes automatic. This is not because you are lazy. It is because you have trained your system to hesitate. You taught it that your word does not mean execution. Discipline B reverses that damage. It removes emotion from the decision-making seat. Emotions still exist. You still feel tired, you still feel bored, you still feel resistance. But those feelings lose authority. They become background noise instead of commands. Discipline B draws a hard line. Feelings are allowed to exist, but they are not allowed to decide. If feelings are allowed to decide, discipline dies before it even starts. This is why doing it anyway matters more than doing it well. Excellence comes later. Consistency comes first. Your brain does not learn identity from intensity. It learns identity from repetition. One perfect day does nothing. 30 ordinary days change everything. When you repeat the same action long enough, your mind updates its self-image. It stops asking if you are the kind of person who shows up. It starts assuming you are. That is when discipline stops feeling heavy. That is when it becomes automatic. Most people chase performance before reliability. They want to do it right before they do it consistently. That is backwards. Reliability creates performance, not the other way around. The military does not train soldiers by asking them to feel ready. They train them by enforcing behavior until the behavior becomes habit. Once habit is formed, attitude follows. Discipline. B always comes before discipline A. Anyone who tries to reverse that order stays stuck forever. You may notice that discipline B feels uncomfortable. That is expected. Discomfort is not a warning sign, it is confirmation. You are removing emotion from control. You are acting without permission from your feelings. That friction is the old system resisting replacement. If you wait for comfort, you stay exactly where you are. If you move through discomfort, you build something new. The goal here is not to do more. The goal is to do what you said you would do. Nothing else matters yet. Do not expand, do not optimize, do not add complexity. One action, one standard, executed daily. That is enough. That is how reliability is rebuilt. That is how self-respect returns. Every day you follow through, you send yourself a clear message. I can be trusted. And when that message repeats often enough, your identity shifts. Notice how different this is from motivation-based living. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline B does not care. Motivation asks how you feel. Discipline B asks what the standard is. Motivation is emotional. Discipline B is structural. Motivation collapses under pressure. Discipline B thrives under pressure because pressure removes negotiation. When things get hard, reliability becomes everything. This chapter exists for one reason: to remove doubt. If you are already acting because of Chapter 2, you might be questioning it. You might be thinking you should understand more before continuing. That is your old pattern trying to regain control. Understanding is not the missing piece. Execution is. The discomfort you feel is not confusion. It is adjustment. Stay with it. Discipline. B does not require belief. It requires compliance. You do not need to feel confident. You do not need to feel strong. You only need to act. The action comes first. The confidence comes later. The strength comes later. The identity comes last. This order is not negotiable. By now, one thing should be clear. Consistency beats talent. Reliability beats intensity. Showing up beats feeling ready. If you can do one small action every day without negotiation, you are already ahead of most people, not because you are special, but because you are doing what they refuse to do when it feels uncomfortable. Do not change anything yet. Do not raise the bar. Do not add more rules. Keep the same standard. Execute it again tomorrow, then the day after that. That repetition is not boring, it is training. And training is how Discipline B is built. In the next chapter, you will see proof, not opinions, not theory. Proof. You will see how this exact mechanism is used to create disciplined behavior at scale under extreme pressure. For now, your job is simple. Keep doing what you started. Do not negotiate. Do not explain. Do not stop. Just show up. Chapter 4. The Automatic Show-Up. Motivation is unreliable. It always has been. It rises, peaks, fades, and disappears without notice. It follows sleep, mood, stress, and comfort. Anything built on it will collapse the moment conditions change. If your system requires motivation to function, you do not have a system. You have a hope, and hope does not survive pressure. This is where most people fail, not because they lack desire, intelligence, or ambition, but because they chose the wrong mechanism to drive their behavior. They tried to control action with emotion. Emotion cannot be controlled. Behavior can. The moment you accept that motivation is not coming to save you, You gain access to something far more reliable, the ability to show up regardless of how you feel. Showing up is not a feeling. It is a decision executed as behavior. It does not ask whether today is easy or hard. It does not negotiate with fatigue or boredom. It operates under a different rule entirely if the standard exists. The action happens. That is it. No performance review, no emotional check-in, no internal discussion. The mistake people make is believing that consistency comes from wanting something badly enough. It does not. Consistency comes from removing emotion from the execution loop. When motivation dies, discipline begins, not the dramatic kind, not the heroic kind, the quiet kind that simply appears, day after day, whether it feels good or not. This is where the real contract is formed, not with the world, not with your goals, with yourself. Every time you say you will show up and then fail to do so, you break that contract, and each time you break it, your word loses weight. You start trusting yourself less. You hesitate more. You explain more. Over time, this erosion becomes your identity, someone who talks, someone who plans, someone who means well, someone who does not execute. The opposite process begins the moment you start showing up consistently, even at a low level. Self-trust is not built through intensity. It is built through reliability, showing up, even imperfectly. Is how you restore credibility with yourself. Discipline B is not about excellence, it is about trust. If you cannot trust yourself to appear, nothing else matters. This is why the quality of your output is irrelevant at this stage. Showing up badly is infinitely more valuable than not showing up at all. Perfection delays action. Delay kills momentum. Momentum is not created by big wins. It is created by repeated presence. Each time you show up, you reinforce a simple internal signal. I do what I say. That signal compounds, not emotionally, but structurally. Your brain learns patterns. It responds to repetition, not intention. When you show up repeatedly, the brain stops asking questions. It begins to expect the behavior. This is how effort decreases over time, not because the work becomes easier, but because resistance loses its authority. The most important days are not the good ones. Anyone can show up when energy is high and conditions are favorable. Those days prove nothing. The bad days are the filter. The days you are tired, irritated, distracted, or bored are the days that determine who you are becoming. When you show up on a bad day, you are not just completing a task. You are training a response. You are teaching your system that discomfort does not cancel commitments. This is where discipline B becomes real, not as an idea, but as a lived pattern. Miss the good days and nothing changes. Miss the bad days and the system collapses. Most people believe they need rest when they are tired. Often, what they need is continuity. Rest has its place, but rest that breaks the chain teaches the wrong lesson. It teaches the brain that standards are conditional, that fatigue earns exceptions, that discomfort has veto power. The automatic show-up removes this confusion. You do not ask whether today qualifies. The decision was made in advance. The standard exists. You appear. The scale of the action can be reduced. The intensity can drop. The quality can suffer. But presence is non-negotiable. This is not punishment. It is structure. Perfectionism is one of the most socially acceptable forms of self-sabotage. It disguises avoidance as standards. People delay because they cannot do it well, not because they cannot do it at all. This logic feels responsible, but it destroys consistency. The automatic show-up requires permission to be imperfect, not as an excuse, but as a strategy. When perfection is removed from the equation, action becomes accessible. You are no longer performing. You are executing. Discipline, Biu, does not measure how impressive the work looks. It measures whether the work happened. This binary metric is what allows consistency to survive over time. Something subtle begins to happen. The effort required to show up decreases, not because you are more motivated, but because the behavior no longer requires negotiation. The action has become familiar. Familiarity reduces friction. This is the beginning of identity compound. Small. Repeated behaviors accumulate into something larger than motivation could ever produce. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying. You begin seeing yourself as someone who shows up. That shift is not declared. It is observed. You notice that skipping feels wrong, that absence creates tension, that not showing up requires justification. This is not guilt. It is alignment. This is how discipline A is prepared without being forced. You are not yet disciplined in identity, but the groundwork is being laid. The system is learning what to expect from you. Your behavior is becoming predictable, not perfect. Predictable. That is the foundation. Predictability is power. It is the ability to rely on yourself without drama. It is the quiet confidence that no matter how the day unfolds, you will appear according to the standard you set, not because you feel like it, because that is what you do. Do not add tools here. Do not optimize yet. Do not redesign your environment or chase efficiency. That comes later. Right now. The only objective is to keep the chain alive. Show up. Again and again and again. Let the behavior do the work. Motivation never could. Let repetition replace emotion. Let presence replace intensity. The automatic show-up is not impressive. It is effective. And effectiveness is what builds discipline that lasts. When you no longer need to convince yourself to act, you have crossed an invisible line. You are no longer chasing discipline. You are practicing it, quietly, consistently, automatically. Chapter 5: Standards and Zero Compromise. Discipline does not collapse because the work is too hard. It collapses because the rules are weak. People like to believe they failed because they lacked motivation, energy, or talent. That is not true. They failed because they allowed exceptions. They failed because they created rules that could be negotiated. The moment a rule can be bent, it is no longer a rule, it is a preference. And preferences do not create disciplined behavior. Discipline only survives where standards are clear and non-negotiable. You must understand the difference between a goal and a standard. A goal is something you hope to reach in the future. It depends on conditions. It depends on outcomes. You can want it, adjust it, delay it, or abandon it without immediate consequences. A standard is different. A standard is a rule for how you behave today. It is binary. You either follow it or you break it. There is no partial credit. There is no emotional debate. People who live by goals drift. People who live by standards move. One hopes for progress. The other enforces behavior. Zero compromise does not mean being extreme for the sake of ego. It does not mean destroying your body or pushing until you break. Zero compromise means something far simpler and far more demanding. It means you do not negotiate with your feelings. It means you do not rewrite the rules in moments of fatigue. It means you do not adjust the standard after the discomfort appears. The rule is decided in advance. When your mind is clear, once the moment arrives, you execute. Feelings are irrelevant. They are allowed to exist, but they are not allowed to vote. Most people lose discipline in the same place, the gray zone, the moment they say, just today. The moment they say, I will make it up tomorrow. The moment they say, this does not really count. Every one of those sentences teaches your mind the same lesson. Your rules do not matter. Your word is flexible. Your standards are optional. The brain learns quickly. Once it learns that your commands can be ignored, it stops taking you seriously. That is when behavioral reliability dies. Not because you are weak, but because you trained yourself to be unreliable. Every broken standard damages your internal authority. You feel it immediately. Even if you try to ignore it, a small loss of respect, a quiet erosion of trust. You begin to doubt your own promises. You begin to hesitate before committing to anything. You lower expectations to avoid disappointment. This is not a motivation problem. This is a credibility problem. You do not trust yourself because you have proven, repeatedly, that your rules are temporary. That is why standards must start small, smaller than your ego wants, smaller than what looks impressive. The objective is not intensity. The objective is 100% compliance. A single rule you never break is more powerful than 10 rules you break occasionally. Discipline is not built by heroic effort. It is built by keeping your word when it would be easy not to. If you cannot guarantee compliance, the standard is too large, reduce it. Do not negotiate it. Your first standards should be boring, clear, almost impossible to fail. Not because you lack ambition, but because you are rebuilding authority. You are teaching your nervous system that when you decide something, it happens. That lesson only sticks when the rule is obeyed every time. Miss once and the signal is broken. The system does not care how good your excuse was. It only records whether the rule was followed. Order matters. You do not start with intensity. You start with presence. Showing up comes before doing more. Time comes before effort. Consistency comes before expansion. People who skip steps always pay for it later. They appear strong for a moment, then disappear. Discipline does not reward shortcuts. It punishes them. The foundation must be stable before the structure grows. You will know you are breaking zero compromise by the signs. You start explaining yourself internally. You start creating stories. You start promising future compensation. Any moment that requires justification is a moment the rule has already been violated. Rules that work do not require explanation. They require execution. Silence is a sign of integrity. Debate is a sign of collapse. Understand this clearly. Discipline B is not powered by motivation. It is powered by standards that do not move. You do not need to feel ready. You do not need to feel confident. You do not need to feel inspired. You need one rule that survives contact with discomfort. One rule you do not betray. That is enough to restart momentum. That is enough to rebuild trust. That is enough to reestablish control. From this point forward, every day is simple. Not easy, but simple. Did you follow the standard or did you break it? No emotional analysis, no personality assessment, no reflection spiral. Behavior decides everything. Keep the rule today, then keep it tomorrow. That is how discipline becomes real. Not as a feeling, not as an idea. As a pattern that does not collapse under pressure. In the next phase, the consequences become personal. Breaking a standard will no longer be framed as a mistake. It will be understood as a loss of personal authority. Ownership begins when you stop asking how you feel and start measuring whether you followed the rule. That is where discipline stops being something you try to do and starts becoming who you are. Chapter 6: Radical Ownership. There is a moment in this process where everything splits in two. Up to now, you have been executing standards. You have been showing up. You have been following rules, and that matters. But this chapter is not about what you have done so far. It is about who is in control from this point forward. Because there is no system strong enough to carry you if you still believe your life is happening to you. At this stage, there are only two paths left, and there is no middle ground. You either continue explaining why things are hard, or you take full responsibility for your behavior. Not partially, not emotionally, fully. This is the crossroads. On one side is the familiar pattern. Blame the schedule, blame fatigue, blame stress, blame timing, blame circumstances that are real and often unfair. On the other side is ownership. No excuses, no stories, no explanations, just responsibility for what you do next. You cannot walk both paths. The moment you keep one foot in explanation, you step out of control. Discipline cannot be trained where there is still a way out. If there is a reason that justifies breaking your standard, then the standard is not real, and if the standard is not real, neither is your authority over yourself. Here is the mechanism most people never see. Every time you blame something outside yourself, you are not just describing reality, you are transferring power. When you say, "I'm tired," and that ends the action, tiredness becomes your commander. When you say, "I'm busy," and the work stops, the schedule is in charge. When you say, "I'm stressed," and the rule dissolves, stress now controls your behavior. As long as there is a reason, you do not have the authority to correct yourself, because you already handed that authority away. Discipline is not about force, it is about command, the ability to issue an order and follow it. The moment you allow conditions to override your rules, you remove yourself from command. This is why people feel stuck even when they know exactly what to do. They are not lacking insight, they are lacking sovereignty. They have trained themselves to obey feelings instead of standards. And whatever you obey, you serve. There is no neutrality here. This is where the truth becomes uncomfortable. Life is often unfair. You did not choose your starting point. You did not choose many of the constraints you operate under. Some of the pressure you face is not your fault. That is real. And it does not change the rule. It is still your responsibility to decide how you act next. Fault and responsibility are not the same thing. Fault looks backward. Responsibility looks forward. You can be wronged and still be responsible. You can be dealt a bad hand and still be accountable for how you play it. The world does not pause execution until conditions improve. This is why systems like the military work. They do not ask why you feel the way you feel. They ask one question: only did you execute or not? Not because they are cruel, but because clarity saves lives. In your own life, clarity saves momentum. Every time you allow circumstance to become an excuse, you teach yourself that standards are optional, and optional standards are not standards at all. At this point, a quiet identity shift begins. Not a dramatic one, not something you announce. It happens through behavior. There are two types of people, and the difference between them is visible. The victim explains, the victim justifies, the victim has reasons ready. They are convincing reasons, logical reasons, understandable reasons, but they still end in broken standards. The owner does not explain much. The owner protects the rule, especially the small one, especially when no one is watching, especially when it would be easy to let it slide. Ownership is not a declaration. It is not a mindset you adopt. It is not something you feel. Ownership is the refusal to break your own standard, even when breaking it would be invisible, even when no punishment follows, even when there is no reward for compliance. This is why ownership cannot be faked. It only exists where behavior stays consistent under pressure, up to now. You may have been following this process because you trusted the system. That was necessary. But it is no longer sufficient. From here on, the reason you execute cannot be the book. It cannot be the plan. It cannot be external structure. It has to be this is my responsibility. This is my standard. This is my rule. And breaking it costs me credibility with myself. Every time you comply, you reinforce authority. Every time you break it, you weaken command. This is where freedom actually begins. Not the kind people talk about. Not freedom from effort. Not freedom from discomfort. Real freedom. The freedom that comes from owning the entire problem. Because the moment you fully own the problem, you also own the solution. No one else needs to change. Circumstances do not need to improve. Motivation does not need to appear. You act because it is yours to act on. That is sovereignty. When you remove excuses, you remove dependence. When you remove dependence, you stop waiting. And when you stop waiting, behavior becomes reliable. This is what the promise of this system has always been. The ability to do what needs to be done without needing the world to cooperate. Not because you are invincible, but because you are accountable. Do not misunderstand this moment. This is not the end. It is not stability. It is not ease. It is a line you cross, from experimenting to owning, from trying to committing, from following to commanding. After this chapter, you no longer get to say, I couldn't. You only get to say, I didn't. And that difference changes everything. From here on, every standard you keep strengthens your authority. Every standard you break weakens it. There is no audience, no applause, no sympathy, just a record of behavior that determines who is in control. Radical ownership is not harsh. It is clean. It removes confusion. It removes negotiation. It removes the noise. And in that silence, action becomes simple. You now own the rules. And because you own them, you are free to execute them. That freedom is not comfortable, but it is real. Chapter 7. The breaking point is guaranteed the endurance test. There will be a point where everything in you wants to stop. That point is not a possibility. It is a certainty. No system runs forever without resistance. No discipline streak moves forward without friction. One day you will wake up tired. One day you will feel flat, bored, irritated, unmotivated. One day the work that felt manageable yesterday will feel heavy for no clear reason. That day is not a sign that something is wrong. It is the signal that the system is working and that you have reached the test it was designed to create. Most people misunderstand this moment. They think exhaustion means misalignment. They think boredom means the path is wrong. They think resistance is a warning sign telling them to slow down, rethink, or stop. That misunderstanding is the core reason people quit. They misread fatigue as failure. They misread pressure as proof that the plan is broken. It is not. Pressure is the checkpoint. This is the wall every disciplined system creates on purpose. It exists to test reliability. This is the phase where results are still quiet, but effort is loud. The early excitement is gone. The novelty has worn off. The rewards have not arrived yet. What remains is repetition, routine, commitment without applause. This is the dip, and the dip is not designed to motivate you. It is designed to filter you. Difficulty is not random. Difficulty is a filter. It separates people who follow standards from people who follow feelings. Anyone can show up when energy is high. Anyone can stay consistent when progress is visible. The system does not care about those moments. It waits for pressure. When pressure arrives, it asks one question: only will you maintain the standard, or will you negotiate with it? The moment you retreat when it gets uncomfortable, you lose behavioral reliability, not because the work stopped, but because the relationship between you and your own rules breaks. Your brain learns something important in that moment. It learns that your standards are conditional. It learns that discomfort has veto power. Once that lesson is learned, discipline collapses quietly, not all at once, but over time. Standards soften, exceptions grow, consistency fades. The system stops producing results, not because it failed, but because you stopped obeying it under stress. This is why the desire of the disciplined person is simple. Not comfort, not ease, reliability. To be the kind of person who does what they said they would do when conditions are bad, not when they feel inspired, not when it is convenient, when it is unpleasant, when it is boring, when it is heavy. That is where trust is built. That is where identity forms. To survive this phase, you must detach emotions from commitment. Feelings are data, not authority. They can inform you, but they do not decide. The rule is simple and non-negotiable. Your emotional state does not get a vote on whether the standard is executed. Your brain will push back against this rule. That is its job. The brain is designed to conserve energy. When effort stays high and rewards stay low, it will look for relief. It will generate convincing arguments. Rest today. Skip once. You deserve a break. Tomorrow will be better. These thoughts are not insight. They are energy-saving mechanisms. Discipline B exists for this exact moment, when thinking becomes unreliable. Behavior must remain fixed. You do not ask how you feel. You do not ask if it is worth it. You follow the standard because it is the standard. That is the entire mechanism. You are not forcing intensity. You are preserving continuity. You are protecting the chain at the breaking point. The mistake most people make is trying to push harder in the wrong way. They increase intensity. They demand more output. They try to overpower fatigue. That approach backfires. It creates burnout. The goal at the wall is not to win big. The goal is to not stop. This is where the rule of one more is applied. When you want to quit, you do not double the workload. You add 1 unit. 1 more repetition, 1 more page, 1 more minute, 1 more small action that keeps the chain intact. The purpose of 1 more is not performance. It is momentum. It breaks the inertia of stopping. It sends a clear signal to your nervous system that the standard still holds, even under pressure. One more is deliberately unimpressive. That is why it works. It requires no motivation. It does not demand heroics. It only demands obedience. You are not proving strength, you are proving reliability by adding one more instead of stopping. You keep the chain alive. And a living chain has power. A broken chain teaches your brain that quitting is an option. This is the decision point that matters, not the size of the effort, but the continuity of it. When you stop completely, the cost is larger than it appears. The immediate relief feels good, but the long-term damage is real. The chain breaks. Behavioral reliability drops. Restarting later requires rebuilding trust from zero. When you continue, even minimally, the system stays intact. Trust compounds. Identity strengthens. The standard remains real. This is not an emotional argument. It is a mechanical one. Two behaviors produce two outcomes. Stop and you train inconsistency. Continue and you train reliability. There is no third option. You do not negotiate with the dip. You pass through it. The disciplined person does not ask how to feel better at the breaking point. They ask how to maintain the standard with the least possible friction. That answer is one more. Always one more. Not forever. Not dramatically. Just one more today. Tomorrow will handle itself. Understand this clearly. The dip is where most people exit not because they are incapable, but because they are unprepared. They did not expect resistance. You are not surprised. You were warned. This moment was always part of the process. It does not mean slow down. It means narrow the task, detach emotion, and execute the minimum required to preserve the chain. By the time you exit this phase, something important has changed. Your confidence no longer depends on feelings. Your commitment no longer depends on motivation. You have evidence. You have shown yourself that pressure does not control your actions. That is not a belief. That is a record. The system does not ask you to feel strong. It asks you to remain consistent. Strength is a byproduct. Identity is a byproduct. Freedom is a byproduct. The action comes first. Always. When you reach the wall, do not dramatize it. Do not analyze it. Do not romanticize suffering. Shrink the task. Add one more. Keep the chain intact. That is the algorithm. Simple, brutal, effective. If you pass this test, you do not become invincible. You become reliable. And reliability is what carries you through every future low point. This is the moment that separates those who occasionally act disciplined from those who are disciplined, regardless of conditions. The breaking point was guaranteed, so is the way through it. Chapter 8, The Invisible Growth Formula. There is a phase almost everyone misreads. It is the phase where you are doing everything right, but nothing seems to be happening. Your behavior is consistent. Your standards are intact. You are showing up. Yet the outside world looks the same. No visible progress, no clear signal, no reward. This is the silent season, and it is where most people quit. Not because they failed, but because they misunderstood what was happening. Silence is not malfunction. Silence is the system working before it reveals itself. You need to understand the operating state you are in right now. If your actions are repeating and your standards are holding, the system is active. The absence of visible output does not mean the input is wrong. It means the system is in lag. Every real system has lag. There is always distance between cause and effect. Anyone who expects immediate results has never built anything that lasts. The problem is not that results are slow. The problem is that impatience convinces people to interfere with a process that was already correct. This is where the patience trap snaps shut. The human brain is wired to seek fast feedback. It wants proof. It wants confirmation. When it does not get a signal, it assumes the action is pointless. That assumption triggers stopping behavior, not because stopping is logical, but because stopping conserves energy in the short term. The brain would rather preserve comfort than protect a long-term system. When you stop during lag time, you do not pause progress. You erase it. You break the chain. And once the chain breaks, behavioral reliability collapses. Most failures do not happen because the plan was wrong. They happen because the system was interrupted before it had time to respond. The habit was forming. The structure was stabilizing. The mind was adjusting. Then impatience stepped in and pulled the plug. That is why starting over feels heavier every time. You are not back at zero. You are below it. You taught your system that consistency is temporary. You taught it that pressure means retreat. That lesson is far more damaging than any single missed result. To understand why nothing looks different yet, you need the correct analogy. Growth does not begin at the surface. It begins underneath. When roots are forming, nothing changes above ground. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. Underneath, structure is being built, strength is being distributed, stability is being engineered. Discipline works the same way. Repeated behavior rewires pathways. Neural roots deepen, resistance patterns weaken. None of that is visible at first, but it is happening, whether you see it or not. Discipline B does its most important work in silence. Every repetition strengthens the root. Every day you hold the standard. The system adapts. This is not belief. This is conditioning. The brain learns what is normal through repetition, not through outcomes. Outcomes are delayed by design. If they were instant, no system would be required. You would not need discipline. You would only need reaction. The delay is what filters out the unreliable. The delay is what selects for those who can hold a standard without reassurance. The mistake people make is tying daily decisions to short-term output. They wake up and ask if it is working. That question is poison. It turns discipline into a negotiation with results. The moment you use early output as the judge, Discipline B loses authority. The correct evaluation criteria are simple. Did you hold the standard? Did you break the chain? Those are the only metrics that matter right now. Anything else distracts from the system you are trying to build. You do not measure discipline by how you feel. You do not measure it by what you see. You measure it by compliance today. Did you do what you said you would do? If yes, the system is intact. If no, the system is compromised. That is the line. There is no other scorecard. Results will come later. They always do, but they only come when the conditions are maintained long enough for the system to express itself. This is where most people get restless and start adjusting. They change the plan, they raise the bar, they add complexity, they chase signals. All of that is interference. The system does not need improvement during lag. It needs protection. Your job is not to accelerate results. Your job is to preserve the conditions under which results are possible. Clear standards, zero compromise, an unbroken chain. That is it. The moment you start experimenting out of impatience, you reset the clock. You must separate your actions from the outcome, not emotionally, structurally. Outcomes are not the driver. Standards are. The discipline is correct if the standard is held. The discipline is wrong if the chain breaks. That is the rule. Do not soften it. Do not add exceptions. This separation is what keeps discipline B alive when rewards are absent. It allows you to continue without eating encouragement, praise, or proof. There is a reason the timing of results is never specified. Timing is unpredictable. Conditions are not. You cannot control when the output appears. You can control whether the system remains intact. The output only has one requirement. The conditions must be sustained. If the conditions hold, the output has a chance. If the conditions break, the output becomes irrelevant. This is the only causal relationship that matters. When impatience shows up, recognize it for what it is. It is not intuition. It is not wisdom. It is the nervous system reacting to uncertainty. Your job is not to listen to it. Your job is to keep the structure stable while the noise passes. Every time you hold the standard without seeing results, you reinforce the identity of someone who does not need validation to continue. That identity is far more valuable than any early win. Understand this clearly. The invisible phase is not wasted time. It is the price of building something real. The system is rearranging itself. Old patterns are being overwritten. New defaults are being installed. That cannot be rushed. It can only be interrupted. Most people interrupt it, not because they are incapable, but because they are impatient. They trade long-term reliability for short-term relief. And they stay stuck. Your responsibility in this chapter is simple. Do not let the absence of visible results influence your behavior. Do not negotiate. Do not reevaluate. Do not seek reassurance. Keep the chain intact. Judge each day by one question only. Did I hold the standard? If yes, you are winning, even if nothing looks different yet. If no, you know exactly what failed. The invisible growth formula is not comforting. It is clarifying. It removes confusion. It replaces emotional interpretation with structural rules. It tells you exactly what to protect and what to ignore. Protect the chain. Ignore the silence. The silence is not a threat. It is proof you are early. Stay inside the system. Stay boring. Stay consistent. Do not expect applause from a process that rewards patience. If you can hold discipline B through the lag, you will not need motivation anymore. The system will carry you. And when the output finally appears, it will look sudden to everyone else. To you, it will make perfect sense. Chapter 9, The Tunnel Vision Protocol. By now, you are no longer starting. You are no longer experimenting. You have already shown up enough times to prove something to yourself. Discipline B is alive. Your behavior has weight. And this is exactly where a different threat appears. Not laziness, not confusion, drift, distraction, the slow erosion that comes from having too many options, too many inputs, too many voices pulling your attention away from what matters. Most people do not lose discipline because they stop working. They lose it because they stop aiming. They keep moving, but not in a straight line. This chapter exists to prevent that. Its role is simple and non-negotiable. Lock your behavior around a single objective and keep it there long enough for identity to finish forming. Tunnel vision is not obsession. It is priority enforced through structure. It is the deliberate decision to place one destination above every temporary feeling that tries to redirect you. Feelings fluctuate. Focus cannot. If your actions are still being guided by how you feel today, your discipline is exposed. Feelings are short-term signals. They react to comfort, novelty, and fatigue. They are not designed to lead long-term behavior. Vision is not motivation. It is direction. And direction must dominate if discipline is going to survive pressure. The first rule is dominance. The destination must sit higher than your current state, higher than boredom, higher than temptation, higher than the desire to escape discomfort. If the goal does not outweigh the feeling wins every time. This is not a moral failure. It is mechanical. Behavior follows the strongest signal. When emotion is louder than direction, action becomes unstable. Tunnel vision corrects this by making the target non-negotiable. The question is no longer, how do I feel today? The question becomes, does this move me toward the target or away from it? When direction leads, emotion follows or gets ignored. Either way, action continues. Vision does not maintain itself, left unattended. It fades. It gets buried under tasks, notifications, conversations, and noise. This is why renewal is not optional. The destination must be placed back in front of you daily, not as inspiration, but as instruction. Renewal is a behavior, a repeated act of reminding your system what matters before the day decides for you. Without renewal, urgency decays, and when urgency decays, standards loosen. Behavioral reliability depends on consistent commands. If the target is not restated, execution becomes reactive. You start responding instead of advancing. This renewal is not visualization. It is not positive thinking. It is not emotional hype. It is a simple reinforcement of direction. You are telling your system, again, what this period of your life is for. You are reducing decision load by narrowing focus. The more often the target is named, the less effort it takes to choose in its favor. This is how consistency is protected, not by force, but by clarity repeated until it becomes default. Once direction is clear, decision-making must become binary. Ambiguity is the enemy of discipline. Gray areas invite negotiation. Negotiation invites delay. Delay invites collapse. The binary test eliminates this chain. Every action either feeds the objective or feeds distraction. There is no neutral. There is no harmless detour. There is no just this once that does not carry a cost. Binary decisions reduce cognitive load. They remove debate. They turn complex choices into simple execution. Does this move me closer or not? If the answer is no, the action is rejected, not analyzed. Rejected. Emotion is excluded from this test. How you feel is not a variable. It does not qualify or disqualify action. It is observed and ignored. Binary rules are powerful because they operate even when willpower is low. They protect discipline when energy drops. They are the difference between progress and erosion. People who maintain discipline long-term are not more motivated. They are more decisive. They decide once, then execute repeatedly. Focus cannot survive unlimited input. This is where isolation becomes necessary, not as an attitude, but as a condition. Every input shapes behavior, conversations, content, opinions, and environments either reinforce direction or dilute it. If you allow constant exposure to competing narratives, your behavior will fragment. Necessary isolation is the removal of inputs that weaken execution. This does not mean hostility. It means selectivity. Not every opinion deserves access to your attention. Not every opportunity deserves consideration. Isolation is not withdrawal. It is filtration. Discipline. B is preserved through input design. You protect the chain by controlling what enters the system. Noise creates hesitation. Hesitation creates exceptions. Exceptions destroy reliability. When isolation is applied correctly, decisions become faster. Temptation loses leverage. Focus sharpens. This is not about comfort. It is about protection. You do not negotiate with sources that undermine your standards. You remove them. The final rule is commitment without a deadline. The until mandate replaces timelines with conditions. You do not stop because you are tired. You stop when the work is done. You do not evaluate progress based on mood. You evaluate it based on continuity. This removes urgency traps. It eliminates the false pressure of arbitrary timelines that lead to burnout or abandonment. The commitment is measured by the chain. As long as the chain holds, the system is working. This is where discipline A begins to appear, quietly, not as a declaration, but as a shift in friction. Breaking the chain starts to feel wrong, not painful. Wrong. Skipping requires explanation. Continuing does not. This is identity taking shape through behavior. You are no longer forcing discipline. You are maintaining alignment. The behavior has become familiar enough that deviation creates resistance. That resistance is the signal that identity is forming. This chapter does not add tools. It removes options. It narrows focus. It locks direction. The objective is not speed. It is protection. You are building something that cannot be rushed and should not be interrupted. Tunnel vision is how you carry discipline B through temptation without erosion. It is how you arrive at the end of the process with your behavior intact. Lock one target, renew it daily, decide in binary, isolate from interference, commit until completion. That is the protocol. Follow it and your discipline will not drift. Ignore it and consistency will decay without you noticing until it is gone. The choice is structural, not emotional. Choose once, execute until finished. Chapter 10. Freedom is obedience to your own rules. There will be a fall, not maybe, not if. It will happen. At some point you will miss a day. You will break a standard. You will hesitate when you said you would move. Anyone who believes discipline ends in a clean. Perfect finish is still living in fantasy. There is no flawless ending. There is only continuation. The mistake is not falling. The mistake is being unprepared for the fall. If you expect perfection, the first slip will feel like proof that the system failed. It did not. You failed to understand the process. A fall is not an exception. It is part of the design. The disciplined life is not a straight line. It is a pattern of alignment, disruption, and recovery. What matters is not whether disruption appears, but how quickly control is reasserted. You do not prepare for success. You prepare for the moment discipline is tested. That moment always comes when you are tired, distracted, or overconfident. Planning for the fall removes its power. It turns chaos into a known event. Known events do not destroy systems. Unplanned reactions do. This requires a different definition of failure. Most people define failure as falling off the path. That definition guarantees collapse. Under that definition, one mistake becomes an excuse to abandon everything. That is not failure. Failure is staying down. Failure is breaking a standard and not returning to it. Failure is allowing a lapse to become a new rule. Falling is a data point. Staying outside the standard is a decision. Discipline does not require a perfect record. It requires a fast recovery. From this point forward, the only metric that matters after a fall is speed. How quickly you return to the standard, not how guilty you feel. Not how deeply you analyze the cause, not how dramatic the story becomes. Speed. The faster you return, the stronger the system becomes. Slow recovery teaches hesitation. Immediate recovery teaches authority. This is how discipline A is protected, not by avoiding failure, but by refusing to let it linger. Immediately after a fall, two voices will appear. They always do. The first voice is permissive. It sounds reasonable. It speaks in explanations. It says, you deserve a break. It says, you will restart tomorrow. It says, one more delay does not matter. It frames comfort as intelligence. The second voice is disciplined. It does not argue. It does not explain. It issues one instruction: return to the standard. Now. These voices are not equal. One maintains control, the other erodes it. In that moment, there is no need for analysis. There is only a choice. Do not negotiate between the voices. Negotiation implies legitimacy. The disciplined voice does not debate. It acts. You do not need to understand why you fell before you stand back up. Understanding can come later. Action comes first. Every time you choose behavior over self-talk, you reinforce the identity that discipline has already created. Every time you choose narrative over action, you weaken it. The body must move before the mind is allowed to speak. Pain will be present after a fall. Disappointment, frustration, self-directed anger. These sensations are not obstacles. They are raw material. Pain is information. It shows you where the system loosened. It shows you which standard was fragile. It shows you which environment failed to support the behavior. Wasted pain creates relapse. Used pain creates refinement. Do not seek comfort from pain. Extract data from it. After the return to the standard is complete, then and only then, you adjust the system, you tighten the environment, you simplify the rule, you remove the trigger that created the lapse, you shorten the recovery window. The system becomes stronger because it has been tested. This is not punishment. This is optimization. Every fall is an opportunity to remove weakness. If the system becomes looser after failure, it was never real. Real systems harden under stress. This is the difference between people who stay disciplined and people who cycle endlessly. The cycle is familiar. They build momentum. They break once. They spiral. They wait for motivation. They restart with emotion. They repeat the same collapse. The disciplined person does something different. They fall. They stand immediately. They return to the rule. They adjust the system. There is no drama, no identity crisis, no story about starting over. There is only continuity. This is where freedom actually begins. Freedom is not the absence of rules. That idea has destroyed more lives than discipline ever could. Freedom is obedience to self-formulated rules, rules you chose deliberately, rules that serve your future, rules that remain in place when feelings fluctuate. When you obey your own rules, you are no longer pushed by impulse. You are not dragged by circumstance. You move because you decided to move. That is autonomy. That is control. You no longer need motivation at this stage. Motivation is unreliable. It appears late and leaves early. Rules remain. Standards remain. When discipline reaches this point, effort decreases. Not because the work is easier, but because resistance is gone. You do not argue with yourself. You execute. The absence of inner conflict is not comfort. It is clarity. This clarity is earned through repetition, not insight, from this point forward. The process is simple, not easy. Simple. You follow the standard. If you fall, you return immediately. You do not explain. You do not justify. You do not wait. You stand. You move. You reinforce the rule. Over time, this response becomes automatic. The fall loses its emotional charge. It becomes just another event. Discipline no longer feels fragile because it is no longer dependent on perfection. This is the mechanism you leave with, not inspiration, not belief. A protocol: fall, stand, return, adjust, repeat. The book is no longer needed once this loop is internalized. The system runs itself. Discipline A is now self-sustaining because Discipline B has already proven its authority. Identity is no longer threatened by mistakes. It is reinforced by recovery. You are not free because you never fail. You are free because failure no longer controls you. You are free because you do not abandon yourself at the first sign of discomfort. You are free because your rules hold even when conditions do not. This is what it means to be self-governed. This is what it means to be reliable. This is what it means to be disciplined without force. There is nothing left to add. No final motivation. No closing speech. You know the rule. You know the response. The work continues without drama. When you fall, you already know what to do. Return to the standard. That is freedom.